You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
Hi, I'm Annie from the US.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you're listening to your favorite international podcast. The podcast hosted by two women who never met in real life and who own not as many diamonds as you'd think, unless you think that we own zero. Maybe that's just me. I own 0 diamonds.
0 diamonds. I have some diamonds. I own some mostly very sentimental diamonds, but nowhere near the diamonds we're going to be talking about today. Before we get started, though, we have a quick reminder. If you would like to support our show and get access to bonus content, mini-sodes, early access, and our monthly live get-togethers, you can join us over on Patreon. We are so grateful to all of our patrons. You truly do keep this podcast going. And while we're at it, it's that time of year again. We are collecting your Halloween listener stories. Creepy encounters, family legend, that thing that happened that still gives you chills years later. Send it all in. You can email us at freshhellpodcast@gmail.com, and we will feature our favorites in our annual Halloween special. Just like last year, there will be a giveaway of Austrian sweets. That's pretty amazing. You guys don't want to miss out on that. Austrian candy it's nice. And the winner will be chosen randomly. All right, so in case you wondered about the totally weird and off-topic talk about diamonds, well, there's a reason for it. Today's story is all about one very infamous piece of jewelry, a necklace so extravagant it could have bankrupted a country, and a scandal so wild it helped topple a monarchy. We are, of course, talking about the affair of the diamond necklace.
So, who of our listeners knows Lady Oscar? Annie, do you know Lady Oscar?
I don't.
So if you grew up in Europe or in Japan, I think in the 80s or 90s, you might remember it. It's the anime The Rose of Versailles, and it told the story of Oscar François de Charchaillet, a woman living disguised as a man to serve as the commander of Marie Antoinette's royal guard. And I loved it. Through Lady Oscar's eyes, we got all the palace intrigue, the gossip, the fashion, the revolution brewing in the background, and yes, the affair of the necklace. And that was actually the very first time I ever heard of this scandal. And I watched it as a teenager in the 90s, even though I was already not interested in cartoons anymore because I was already at the age I started dating. But as a big history nerd, I made sure to watch it every week. Remember those good old days when you had to watch something when it aired or else you might have missed it forever?
That's it, yes. Kids today will never know.
Kids will never know. Anyway, Lady Oscar made Versailles look like the most dramatic soap opera ever produced, and honestly, when you hear the real story, you realize it wasn't that far off.
Yeah. So if we're going to talk about the affair of the diamond necklace, we need to begin where much of this drama unfolded, Versailles. And I don't mean Versailles, the town, I mean the palace. Even if, like me, you've never been, you can probably picture it. The endless gardens, the hall of mirrors, glittering chandeliers, the fountains that seem to stretch into infinity. It's one of the most famous buildings in the world, and for good reason. So let's set the scene. The story of Versailles begins in 1623, when Louis XIII had a modest hunting lodge built in the countryside, about 12 miles outside of Paris.
I have to laugh about the idea. What do you think meant modest for Louis XIII? I think we have very different ideas of modest.
Right. Yeah, like the Newport cottages, quote unquote. Yeah. Just something modest, only 50,000 square feet or so. You do wonder, right? But they say, it wasn't too fancy, just a place he could escape the pressures of the city and chase deer through the forests. I guess like England's Balmoral, maybe, right?
Yeah, that's how I picture it. So modest.
But his son, Louis XIV, had very different ideas. Known as the Sun King, Louis XIV believed that everything in France, the nobility, the court, the state, should revolve around him, just as planets orbit the sun. And he turned that philosophy into architecture. Starting in the 1660s, Louis XIV transformed his father's little hunting lodge into a massive palace complex. He spared no expense. By the end of his reign, Versailles covered more than 60,000 square meters, with hundreds of rooms, vast gardens, and a court life so elaborate that it practically functioned as its own universe. The message was clear. If you wanted access to power, you came to Versailles, and you played by the king's rules. Life at Versailles was a strange mix of rigid rituals and glittering spectacles. The king's daily routine was a public performance, waking up, dressing, eating, all of it done before an audience of courtiers who jostled for the honor of handing him his shirt or passing him his napkin. These little favors were currency. Being close to the king meant influence, and influence could mean wealth, appointments, or titles. It was all very theatrical, and that was the point. The grandeur of Versailles was designed to awe visitors and keep the bored nobility occupied and entertained. The palace itself had more than 700 rooms, including apartments for hundreds of nobles who were expected to live there part of the year. Imagine being crammed into a gilded fishbowl with your rivals, with no privacy and constant scrutiny.
Honestly, it sounds a little bit like a historical noble version of Big Brother.
I used to watch that with April a million years ago. So every hallway, every salon was buzzing with gossip. Who had the king's ear? Who was falling out of favor? Who was sleeping with whom? Very Game of Thrones. By the time Marie Antoinette arrived at Versailles in 1770 as a teenage bride to the future Louis XVI, the palace was already notorious for extravagance. The Hall of Mirrors, completed in 1684, was the showpiece of the palace. 17 giant mirrors facing 17 windows, reflecting the light from hundreds of candles so brightly that it must have felt like standing inside of a jewel box. The gardens were another marvel. 800 hectares of manicured paths, sculptures, groves, and fountains, all designed to show that man, or more specifically the king, could bend nature itself to his will. But Versailles was also a place of contradictions. Behind the gold leaf and marble, conditions could be surprisingly uncomfortable. The palace didn't have proper plumbing, so the smell was rarely as refined as the architecture. Winters were freezing, summers stifling, and privacy was non-existent. Still, it was the ultimate stage for French politics, and to be seen at Versailles was to matter.
Fun fact, Versailles actually has a twin of sorts in Vienna. If you've ever visited Schloss Schönbrunn, you'll notice the resemblance right away. Like Versailles, Schönbrunn began as a hunting lodge. It was built on former hunting grounds just outside the city, where the Habsburgs could escape court life and chase, again, deer through the woods. In the late 17th century, Emperor Leopold I had big ambitions of turning Schönbrunn into a kind of Austrian Versailles, complete with sprawling gardens, elaborate fountains, and a palace to match the grandeur of the French king. The project didn't quite reach the same overwhelming scale, yet the influence is obvious. Versailles was a statement of absolute monarchy, while Schönbrunn became the summer residence of the Habsburg emperors, painted in that distinctive imperial yellow, Schönbrunner Gelb as we call it. And here's where the worlds of France and Austria intersect. Well, at least in our story. Because it was at Schönbrunn in 1755 that Archduchess Maria Antonia was born, the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresia and her husband Franz Stephan of Lothringen.
That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids, yeah.
Get off of her, man.
Well, actually, if you go to Schönbrunn, when you ever come here, we go there. And Maria Theresia had a huge bed where she would lie after giving birth, and the whole court would parade through and kind of congratulate her, and she would start working right again after giving birth, basically.
Oh my goodness.
From the bed, yeah. Mm-hmm. She was pregnant all the time, like all the time.
That's amazing.
That's amazing, but also, geez.
That's a lot. That's a lot to put a person's body through.
And she was very much in love with her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was kind of he had a wandering eye. So Maria Antonia, she grew up running through those Schönbrunn gardens and learning her lessons in the palace rooms and preparing, though she couldn't know it then, for a life that would eventually take her far away from Vienna, to Versailles itself. There, of course, she'd become known by the French version of her name, Marie Antoinette. The Habsburg dynasty had ruled for centuries, and under Maria Theresia it was as strong as ever. The Empress was one of Europe's most powerful rulers, and she understood the value of what the Habsburgs had been practicing for generations. Belagerant Ali, tu Felix Austria nube. Let others wage war, you, fortunate Austria, marry. The Habsburgs were famous for marrying their sons and daughters into every royal family in Europe, weaving a web of alliances that often proved more useful than any battlefield victory. And with so many children, Maria Theresia had plenty of diplomatic playing cards to deal. And Maria Antonia was one of them. But before we send her off to France, let's stay a little bit longer with young Maria Antonia. Life at Schönbrunn was impressive, but it was also surprisingly domestic. Despite the scale of the palace, Maria Theresia tried to raise her children in a way that emphasized family closeness. Meals were often shared, the children played together, and the Empress herself took an active interest in their education, or at least in making sure they were educated. For Maria Antonia, this was both a blessing and a curse. She was very sweet-natured, charming, and musically talented. But by most accounts, her education was not as rigorous as it could have been. She struggled with spelling and writing. Her French was shaky, and she had little interest in serious study. Instead, she excelled at dancing, music, and anything social. The very skills that would later help her captivate the French court, and also, ironically, earn her criticism for being frivolous. One of the most famous episodes from Maria Antonia's childhood was her meeting with a certain musical prodigy, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. In 1762, when Maria Antonia was about 7 years old and Mozart only 6, the Mozart family visited Schönbrunn to perform for the imperial family. After dazzling everyone with his skill at the harpsichord, little Wolfgang is said to have slipped on the polished floor and been helped to his feet by Maria Antonia. And according to legend, the bold young Mozart declared that he would marry her someday. Of course, that didn't happen.
No. Well, the not getting married.
The not getting married
happen,
part,
but
yes.
The meeting happened. What a meet cute for the two of them, though.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's really cute. I mean, it's legend, but it's possible that this... he also apparently jumped onto Maria Theresia's lap. That's also another legend.
Oh.
By the mid-1760s, Maria Theresia was looking for a French alliance. Austria and France had long been rivals, but the shifting political landscape of Europe made cooperation suddenly very attractive. What better way to cement peace than through a marriage? And so, Maria Antonia was chosen as the bride for the French Dauphin, the grandson of Louis XV, who would one day become Louis XVI. Preparing her for this role was no small task. Maria Antonia had to be reshaped into a French princess. Tutors were brought in to polish her French and give her lessons in court etiquette. Her teeth were another issue. This is a quote by Catherine Coulson for the Pen and Sword blog. Quote, Maria Antonia's teeth were crooked, and for the Bourbon court, that would never do. Society dentist Pierre Lavarin was summoned to the rescue, wielding Fauchat's bandeau. This dental device took its name from its pioneering inventor, Pierre Fauchat, and was sort of a brace in the shape of a horseshoe. It was fitted into the patient's mouth, fastened to the teeth by tightly tied strands of gold, and over time it served to reshape the dental arc and straighten out crooked teeth. Marie Antoinette suffered through months of unanesthetized dental work as the bandeau was systematically tightened. On and on it went until, to her immense relief, Lavaron declared himself satisfied. Marie Antoinette now had teeth fit for France. End quote.
You never think of Marie Antoinette in braces, do you?
No. It must have been so torturous. Also, I wonder how bad must her teeth have been.
Hurting.
No, how bad were her teeth if they were too bad for the French court at the time? After all, we know from Louis XIV.
Oh, yeah. You know that was a mess up in there. Too many teeth, not enough teeth. Who can say?
Poor girl.
I know. It's, yeah. You don't think of things like that sometimes, though, do you? It's like, yeah. Oof. Okay. So in 1770, at just 14 years old, Maria Antoinette was married by proxy in Vienna, with her brother, Ferdinand Karl, standing in for the groom. She then left Austria forever, crossing the Rhine in a grand ceremonial procession. At the border, there was a literal exchange ritual. She was stripped of all her Austrian clothes and belongings and redressed entirely in French fashion, symbolizing that she was leaving her old identity behind. From that moment on, Maria Antoinette became Marie Antoinette, Dauphine of France. That was a big scene in the movie, right, with Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her new husband, Louis Auguste, the future Louis XVI, was only 15, and, if we're being honest, not exactly Prince Charming. He was awkward, shy, and more interested in hunting and tinkering with locks than he was in romance. I mean, kind of a typical 15-year-old, to be honest, right? Their marriage was supposed to secure a strong alliance between France and Austria, but in the short term, it just mostly produced awkwardness. The young couple reportedly failed to consummate their marriage for years, a fact that became a running joke at court and a point of real diplomatic concern for both of their families. Like, come on, you two, we need heirs or this is all pointless. Marie Antoinette, meanwhile, found herself in a court very different from the relatively warm family atmosphere of Schönbrunn. Versailles was all ceremony, all gossip, all the time. She was scrutinized at every moment, how she walked, how she dressed, how she smiled, even how she slept. The ritual of the royal bedchamber, where her waking and dressing were public events, must have felt suffocating to a girl who had been used to a much freer childhood. It kind of reminds me, like, the way Marie Antoinette lived her life is very similar to how we think of modern-day celebrities living,
in a way.
Yeah.
It's also funny, there's a strong resemblance if you then think later on Elizabeth when she became the Empress of Austria, and she was used to this very wild, very free childhood in near Lake Starnberg. And then she became the Empress, and they had adapted by then to the very rigid court system, the Spanish court ceremonial. And she felt really trapped and unfree, therefore.
Yeah, I can imagine it's... There are a lot of downfalls, aren't there, to this kind of celebrity?
Yeah.
So, at first, though, Marie Antoinette, she was popular. The French adored the young Dauphine, who seemed to embody grace and charm. She danced, she laughed, she played music, and she had a genuine ability to win people over. But popularity at Versailles was a fragile thing, and it wasn't long before cracks appeared. The lack of children was one problem. The longer she and Louis went without producing an heir, the more the whispers spread. Her Austrian background was another. Many at the French court mistrusted Austria and saw her as a foreign interloper. To cope with the pressure, Marie Antoinette turned increasingly to her own amusements. She loved fashion, gambling, and the theater, and she quickly became known for her extravagant taste. In time, she would retreat to the Petit Trianon, her private palace on the Versailles ground. It's like the royal she shed, right? And that's where she tried to escape.
Yes, it's a royal she shed. Yeah.
It's
a royal rococo she shed.
Yeah, it's probably bigger than our houses, right?
Definitely.
Significantly larger. I mean, if it's a private palace, come on. I really need to visit Versailles. But yeah, this is where she tried to escape the constant scrutiny of court life. And there, she even built a little model village, the Hameau de la Reine, where she could play at being a shepherdess, surrounded by carefully staged rustic charm. For her, it was a refuge. For her critics, it was proof that she was frivolous, out of touch, and more interested in luxury than duty.
I mean, can you imagine being like a peasant and hearing that your queen, that they kind of brought in from another country, is there in this grand palace playing shepherdess?
And your family is starving.
Yeah.
No, I think there would be a problem with that.
It's kind of like LARPing poor people. And I get it. They didn't mean, or she didn't mean it like that. But now looking back, it's like, is that such a great idea? Could we maybe make people angry with that?
Yeah. Well, I think people also didn't really think, this is when the tide of public opinion started to matter, right? And so, by the time the affair of the diamond necklace unfolded in the 1780s, Marie Antoinette was already standing on shaky ground. She had enemies at court, a tarnished reputation among the public, and a growing image as Madame Déficit, the queen who spent too much while her people went hungry. Whether she was guilty or innocent of any particular scandal didn't really matter anymore. She had become the perfect symbol of everything the French resented about their monarchy. But all of that was still to come. At the start, Marie Antoinette was just a young Austrian archduchess, married off at 14, trying to navigate the glittering but treacherous new world at Versailles.
By the 1780s, Versailles had become a symbol of everything the French people resented: extravagance, corruption, and an elite nobility seemingly living in another world while the rest of the country faced rising bread prices and economic hardship, while they were LARPing as peasants, which is fun. And since we're talking about bread prices, let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions right here. The famous, let them eat cake. Marie Antoinette never said this. The quote actually comes from Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions written in the 1760s, when Marie Antoinette was still a child in Vienna. Rousseau attributes it to a great princess without naming anyone. Later on, revolutionaries eager to paint Marie Antoinette as cold and out of touch latched onto it and made it hers. It was just too perfect, a frivolous queen, so disconnected from her starving people that she thought bread could simply be replaced with cake, or brioche, as she said, allegedly. The irony is that while Marie Antoinette certainly enjoyed luxury, she wasn't the cartoon villain the quote suggests. By the 1780s, she was deeply unpopular, yes, but the reasons were much more complex. Political mistrust, xenophobia against her Austrian roots, resentment of her spending, and the endless rumor campaigns that followed her everywhere at Versailles. Still, once the "let them eat cake" line stuck to her name, there was no getting rid of it. And that one little line, "let them eat cake," is a great example of how Marie Antoinette was dragged into what we would now call a full-blown smear campaign. Once she became Dauphine, and especially after she was queen, she was targeted in an avalanche of pamphlets and caricatures that painted her as everything, from wasteful to immoral to downright treasonous. These pamphlets were called libelles, cheap, scandalous little booklets that spread like wildfire through Paris. Fun fact, the English word libel comes from those libelles. So, some of them accused her of bankrupting the kingdom with her gambling and fashion. Others claimed she was unfaithful to her husband, naming alleged lovers from courtiers to politicians to actors, saying she had lesbian affairs with her closest friends, even witchcraft. Nothing was too outrageous. It's important to understand that these weren't harmless tabloid rumors. It's not like we're at the supermarket and looking at some yellow press and go like, that's interesting. They were politically motivated attacks designed to undermine the monarchy itself by destroying the queen's image. And because Marie Antoinette was foreign, the Austrian outsider, she was an easy target. To many French people, she never truly belonged, and every scandal, no matter real or invented, reinforced the idea that she was frivolous, greedy, and dangerous. The pamphlets worked hand in hand with gossip at Versailles. In a court that thrived on spectacle and rumor, Marie Antoinette's every choice became ammunition for her enemies. When she retreated to her private Petit Trianon, people said she was shutting herself away in secret debauchery. When she dressed more simply in muslin gowns at her little model farm, critics accused her of mocking real peasants. Even her attempts at charity, like donating to hospitals and orphanages, were twisted into accusation of hypocrisy.
Before we get to the con artists, let's talk about the necklace itself. And if you're in our Facebook group, you all know how much I love antique jewelry. So talking about this whole thing is giving me great joy. All right. This necklace was one of the most extravagant creations of the 18th century, and its story starts years before Marie Antoinette ever even set foot in Versailles. What happened was, back in the 1770s, King Louis XV was very much in love with his mistress, Jeanne, better known as Madame du Barry. He wanted to give her a gift that would outshine anything anyone had ever seen before. And what could be more fitting than a necklace dripping with hundreds of diamonds?
Just to pause on diamonds themselves for a second, and I know we've talked about this before, but it's worth reminding everyone. In the 18th century, diamonds were rare. Really rare. These weren't just glittery little stones you could pick up in a mall jewelry store, right? They were mined in very limited places, mostly in India, and later a little bit in Brazil. And they were almost exclusively reserved for kings, queens, and the very top of the nobility. And it wasn't until the late 19th century when the giant South African mines were discovered, and then the De Beers Company created their near monopoly, that diamonds started being marketed as something every bride must have. And the whole "a diamond is forever" thing, that's all their advertising. In Marie Antoinette's time, a diamond was closer to a crown jewel, a true statement of wealth and power.
Exactly. And that's why this necklace was so explosive. It wasn't just bling, it was a symbol of obscene extravagance at a time when ordinary people could not afford bread. So, two of Paris's most prominent jewelers, Charles Baumer and Paul Bassange, were commissioned to create it. And create it they did, or at least they assembled it. The jewelers spent years buying up the largest and finest diamonds they could find, piecing together a necklace that was so massive it practically needed its own set of shoulders. It needed shoulder pads and I
have to say, I sent Annie the photo. We were talking about the necklace.
Yeah.
And we were exchanging photos.
Yeah.
And Annie will tell you her. But what did I say, Annie? That's a necklace that can just be worn naked.
Naked. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. This thing is I said to Johanna, yeah, it's not for me. Someone was saying to me, would you like to have this, Annie? And I was like, thank you for thinking of me, but no, it's a bit too much. It is, though. It's like there's a beautiful diamond necklace, but then imagine that they were like, you know what? More. And so they were like, what if we added diamond ribbons all over it with enamel bows? And there's nowhere to rest your gaze. It's just a bit too much. Anyway, let's talk more about it so you understand what we're saying. So the final piece contained around 647 diamonds, and it weighed 2,800 carats. So this design wasn't exactly quiet luxury.
No.
Yeah, this isn't an old money necklace. This is a new money necklace. Multiple diamond strands, clusters, festoons, and tassels. Oh, don't forget the tassels. all cascading together.
There are really tassels.
I keep thinking about
tassels.
you saying how it needed to be more naked. Yeah, you're right. It would look great if you were naked wearing it.
It's a naked necklace.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. This wasn't jewelry you wore to a quiet dinner party. It was jewelry that screamed, look at me. Look how much power and money I have.
Or how nice my breasts are. It was for his favorite...
His mistress.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's exactly what it was for.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm not mad about it, I get it. But the price tag, it matched the sparkle. The jewelers valued the necklace at around 1.6 million livres, a staggering sum. To put that into perspective, that was roughly the equivalent to the cost of a fully equipped warship, or...
That's what the jewelers said themselves, I think, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right. Or enough to feed an entire village for years. So even in a world where Versailles is the norm, sort of, this is... Yeah. It's a lot. I'm just looking at the picture of it again right now, and there's really a lot going on there. Okay. Here's the problem, and this is where everything falls into place that led us to being here to discuss this. So, this extravagant diamond harness is created, and before Louis XV could even present this thing to Madame du Barry, he had the audacity to die in 1774. His grandson ascended the throne as Louis XVI, and one of his very first acts was to banish the mistress, Madame du Barry, from court. So suddenly, Balmer and Versailles were left holding on to the most expensive piece of jewelry in France, and they didn't have a buyer.
I just talked to my husband today when I told him this story, like in a very heightened up, shortened version, and we were talking about, imagine you're these two jewelers, and you get the king of France comes to you and says, I want this extravagant, never been there diamond necklace, and you spend years and years and years buying all these diamonds that you can find, putting in your own money, your own fortune, thinking this is this great honor and it's going to make you so wealthy. And then the dude dies.
Yeah.
And you're just there like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
It is very inconvenient.
Poor guys. Yeah. Inconvenient. Yeah. You could say so.
Yeah. I would say it's an inconvenient situation for sure. Yeah. So they tried everything. I mean, they didn't actually try breaking it down into smaller, more saleable pieces
themselves. That's what I would have done. I don't understand why they didn't. I don't know.
I don't either. It would have lent itself so easily. Like when you watch Antiques Roadshow today, and they'll be like, look at this gorgeous pendant. Oh, if you look at the back, you can clearly tell that this was part of a much more extravagant piece. And you're like, oh, I wonder what that looked like. But like, fair enough, right? Like, it's not like nobody does this. Like, why not create... Anyway, they couldn't do it. They couldn't let it go. They had to sell this absolute, oh my God. It's just, it's such a very, y'all, when I tell you that this is a very specific piece of jewelry, where are you going to, like you said, Johanna, where are you going to wear this? In the bedroom? Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing. So yeah, they tried everything. They offered it to foreign royalty. They discreetly suggested it might be perfect for the new queen, Marie Antoinette. But Marie Antoinette had no interest in it. She was like, absolutely not. She already disliked Madame du Barry, and the idea of wearing her cast-off naughty diamonds was appalling. Besides, she had seen what kind of criticism her spending attracted, and the last thing she needed was an over-the-top necklace. And like I said, I can't blame her. I love jewelry. I love antique diamonds. This piece, it's a lot. I'm someone who is often called a lot, and I like things that are often a lot, but this, it's just too much. And everyone agreed. They were like, where am I going to wear this? So the necklace just sat, gathering dust and debt for years. The jewelers, who were desperate to find someone, anyone, to take it off their hands. And that desperation would soon collide with another man's ambition. And that man was Cardinal de Rohan.
So now that we've met the necklace, let's meet the man who wanted it most, Cardinal Louis de Rohan. He was born in 1734 into one of France's most prestigious noble families, the House of Rohan, a family that loved to remind everyone they were the descendants from the Dukes of Brittany and were basically royal themselves. From the start, his career was paved with privilege. He was well educated, ambitious, and by the age of 30, he was already a bishop. Soon after, he became the French ambassador to Vienna, which is where his trouble with Marie Antoinette really began. In Vienna, instead of being the polished diplomat, Rohan managed to offend almost everyone. He lived extravagantly, spent lavishly, and involved himself in court gossip. Worst of all, he spread rumors about Empress Maria Theresia, Marie Antoinette's formidable mother. He suggested that the Empress was too friendly with certain men, and these outrageous rumors made their way back to Vienna. You can imagine how well that went over. By the time his ambassadorship ended, Maria Theresia despised him, and young Maria Antonia had no reason to feel any warmer toward him. Back in France, though, Rohan's career continued. He became a cardinal, and in 1777 he was appointed Grand Almoner of France, a very prestigious position that put him at the very heart of the church hierarchy. But at Versailles, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Marie Antoinette could not stand him. She remembered his behavior in Vienna, and she went out of her way to snub him at court. And for a man of his pride, this was unbearable. He desperately wanted to win back her favor. And so by the 1780s, he was a man with everything to lose and a very obvious weakness, a desperate need to believe that Marie Antoinette might forgive him. And it's here that we see why Rohan became the perfect mark. He was rich, he was vain, and he was ambitious, but also credulous, the kind of man who would convince himself that the queen secretly wanted to reconcile with him, even if she never looked his way. He was an easy mark for the right person. And that right person would be Jeanne de la Motte. Her full name was Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy, Comtesse de la Motte. That title, though, was more self-styled than earned. She was born in 1756 to a family with royal blood, but no money. Her father was a supposed descendant of an illegitimate branch of the Valois line, which once ruled France. By the 18th century, however, the family had fallen on very hard times. Jeanne grew up in poverty, with little education and no real prospects. But Jeanne was clever, ambitious, and determined to claw her way out of obscurity. As a young woman, she was placed in a convent, but she had no desire for the quiet life of a nun. Instead, she made her way into society using her good looks, her charm, and this very little percentage of royal ancestry to attract attention. She eventually married Nicolas de la Motte. Nicolas was a soldier, an officer in the gendarmes. But nothing about his career suggested greatness. He had neither wealth nor real influence. Like Jeanne, he was hungry for both. And when he married her in 1780, he married into her ambitions too. He happily styled himself as the Comte de la Motte, leaning into his wife's claims of royal ancestry. And together they built the illusion of being a glamorous, impoverished aristocratic couple who had simply fallen on hard times.
Jeanne was a natural schemer. She understood the power of connections, and she knew how to use flattery and manipulation to get what she wanted. She managed to gain the patronage of wealthy lovers and benefactors, and she lived far beyond her actual means. But for Jeanne, that wasn't enough. She wanted true wealth, true influence, and she believed she deserved it. After all, wasn't she technically descended from French royalty? By the early 1780s, she had gathered around her a circle of equally ambitious characters. There was not only her husband, Nicolas, who was happy to play the role of aristocrat while living off his wife's schemes. Nicolas' role in their schemes was often practical. He was a networker, cultivating friendships with shady characters and moving in circles where money, gossip, and favors flowed freely. He was also a go-between, someone who could handle logistics, pass letters, and give Jeanne's plots a veneer of legitimacy by playing the part of her noble husband. It's worth saying that Nicolas wasn't especially respected in these circles. Contemporary accounts suggest that he was seen as a bit of a hanger-on, riding on Jeanne's charm and cunning.
You know how I think of him, like, what was his name, Paul? The playmate.
Oh, I don't know that guy's name, though.
Am I stupid now? Jesus Christ, my brain. Doris Stratton's husband.
Yes.
Paul Snyder.
Paul Snyder. That's it.
I'm so glad that came back.
Girl, your brain it's functioning. It's running on all 8 cylinders. You got it.
Hate it. Not that he was kind of a murderer, but this kind of hanger-on. That's what I mean.
Yes, like, I totally get that.
Charming hanger-on, yeah.
100%. But he was very loyal to her, and when the diamond necklace plot took shape, he was all in. He helped manage meetings, spread the story that his wife was secretly close to the queen, and once the diamonds were in their possession, he played a key role in breaking them apart and selling the stones on the black market. Then there was Rétaux de Villette. His full name was Jacques-Claude Bugnon de Rétaux de Villette, though he was no great nobleman, despite the very long fancy surname. He was, in essence, a professional adventurer, charming, witty, but without money or morals. He floated around Paris, surviving on charm, gambling, and affairs, often with men as well as women, which in late 18th century France meant he had a bit of a scandalous reputation. What made him indispensable to Jeanne was his gift for writing. He had beautiful penmanship and a knack for mimicry, which made him the perfect forger. It was Rétaux who produced the Letters from the Queen that would convince Cardinal de Rohan that he was corresponding directly with Marie Antoinette. Without Rétaux's talent, the scheme might never have taken off. Then there was Nicole d'Oliva, perhaps the most tragic figure of them all. Nicole was a young woman from a very humble background who bore a striking resemblance to Marie Antoinette. Jeanne allegedly discovered her working as a sex worker in Paris and realized she could be useful. Nicole wasn't particularly ambitious. She was poor, vulnerable, and likely dazzled by the attention Jeanne paid her. She was told she would play a small part in helping reconcile the Queen with Cardinal de Rohan. Nicole would play the Queen for just a few minutes, but we'll tell you all about that next week. For now, let's just say that together, Jeanne, Nicolas, Rétaux de Villette, and Nicole formed a strange little troupe of grifters and pawns, each with their role to play in what would become one of the most infamous cons in history.
This gives very much Ocean's 11 Rococo edition. Like, they are out there assembling this troupe of forgers and mimicrists and, I don't know, adventurers. Once Jeanne de la Motte had Cardinal de Rohan in her sights, it was only a matter of time before she reeled him in. She knew his greatest weakness, his desperation for Marie Antoinette's forgiveness. The Queen's coldness towards him was humiliating, and everyone at Versailles could see it. If Jeanne could convince him that she had an inside track to the Queen, she would have him under her control. She began slowly dropping hints about her supposed friendship with Marie Antoinette. Jeanne claimed that she had the Queen's ear, that she sometimes carried out little errands or messages on her behalf. To a desperate man, that kind of gossip was irresistible. Soon, Jeanne arranged for Cardinal de Rohan to receive a letter that appeared to come directly from Marie Antoinette herself. And this is where Rétaux de Villette's talent came in. With his elegant handwriting and his knack for imitation, he forged letters that looked convincing enough to pass as royal correspondence. The tone was carefully chosen, gracious and just warm enough to convince Rohan that the Queen was slowly thawing towards him. The letters always arrived through Jeanne, of course. She played the part of the trusted intermediary, the only person who could safely ferry messages between the Cardinal and the Queen without anyone at court finding out. It was a brilliant move. It kept her in control of the whole charade and gave her access to Rohan's most private hopes and fears. At first, the letters were small and tentative, polite words of gratitude, subtle suggestions that perhaps forgiveness was possible. The cardinal, desperate to believe, responded with passionate devotion. His replies were full of humility, admiration, and barely veiled longing. Jeanne and Rétaux made sure that the queen's supposed responses mirrored his emotions, gradually building intimacy. It was essentially a catfishing scheme more than 2 centuries before the term even existed. Over time, the correspondence grew bolder. The supposed queen wrote that she longed to reconcile, but that political enemies at court made it impossible to do so openly. Their friendship, even their affection, would have to remain secret. For a man like Rohan, proud, ambitious, and very infatuated with the idea of being the queen's chosen confidant, this was very intoxicating. The scheme was working better than Jeanne could have dreamed. The more letters exchanged, the more convinced Rohan became that he was playing a starring role in a secret royal drama. He wasn't just some courtier out of favor anymore. He was Marie Antoinette's confidant, her friend. Maybe. Dare he dream? Even her beloved? Of course, letters could only take the illusion so far, so Jeanne raised the stakes. She told Rohan that the queen wished for a personal meeting, something discreet, something away from prying eyes. For the cardinal, this was the moment he had been waiting for. And so the plan for the midnight rendezvous was set in motion.
And that is where we'll leave things today. A desperate cardinal, a scheming countess, a forged romance, and a midnight garden meeting with the woman he thought was the Queen of France. There's a lot going on. So next time we're going to see how that all worked out. Spoiler alert, it's not great. And how in the end, a woman who never touched the necklace was blamed for it all.
I love history.
I do too. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
So good.
So good.
You have something good?
There's a loud plane going overhead. Do you want to do yours first?
Yeah. My something good is I recommended when the first season came out, Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne, I think is her name.
Yes.
And the second season just finished, and it's so good. I loved it so much.
Oh, nice.
And it was so funny because we came full circles, Annie. I sent you the clip. There's one episode with, what's his name from Kemal Nanjiani?
Yes.
What's his name?
Kumail Nanjiani.
And yeah, who was in
Chippendales.
Welcome to Chippendales that we covered in our Cinema Macabre on Patreon. And he was in one of the episodes and he was playing Gator Joe, Florida Panhandle police officer who rescues a little alligator and carries him around, or her because her name is Daisy, in a little like baby carry.
I need to watch this show.
Put on your chest. It's so good.
I need to watch.
Please watch it.
I'm going to.
I love Columbo, and it's really. At first, I was scared that they're gonna kind of mess it up, but it's such a great modern take.
Oh, good.
What's her name? At the first episode of season 2, it's with the one who just played in Wicked. I'm so bad with names today.
Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah, exactly. She plays not triplets, 5 quintuplets. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, I loved it.
I need to watch it.
You have to watch it. So that's my something
that
good for this
really
week.
fun.
Go and watch Poker Face.
I will. We just finished Wednesday, season 2.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
I haven't watched it yet.
I think
also
it's
not
fun.
Season 1. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're fun. They're not, some of it when I'm trying to pronounce words, there's a couple of skits it brings to mind, but there's a scene in Ted Lasso where they're trying to pronounce one of the last names of one of the players whose last name is Zolo. Well, yeah, I'll find the link and send it to you because it's like, they're like saying a word, saying it back, and it's like, what am I saying? Am I not saying the same thing you're saying? And he just keeps saying it over, and it's like, I don't understand. We're saying the same thing. It just makes me laugh.
It feels also
so
very
bad.
relatable to us, I think.
It does. I'm terrible. I'm so bad with the French.
No, you're not. Not at all.
Well, my something good is that it's finally cooling off here. It's finally. There's like air in the air again. You can feel that sweater weather is on the horizon, and I am so happy. So, yeah, that's my something good. Yay.
And hopefully less migraine days.
Oh my God. It's been so, it's fine. All right.
All right, that's it.
That's it. That's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, or even, dare I say, all of them, please do us a huge favor and leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can also leave a comment on YouTube or under each episode on Spotify. We love to see them, and it really helps in more ways than you would think.
And if you'd like to support the show and get access to bonus content, you can join us over on Patreon. That's where you'll find our monthly live get-togethers, early episode releases, and the Cinema Macabre episodes we do just for our Hellions. Currently, we are covering the Netflix documentary Amy Bradley is Missing. We are endlessly grateful to everyone who already supports us there. Truly, you keep this show going.
Truly, you really do. It's also that spooky time of year again, which means we're collecting your Halloween listener stories. If you've had a creepy experience, do you have a family ghost story, or just something that still really creeps you out and gives you the chills years later, we want to hear about it. You can email your story to us at freshhellpodcast@gmail.com, and we will feature our favorites in our annual Halloween special. This is one of our favorite traditions, and we know you all love it too.
You can also recommend us to a friend, preferably one with a taste for diamonds, scandals, maybe a little bit of history or a lot of history. You can find all of our episodes, links, and extras on our website, and we're always hanging out in our Facebook group, so please come join the conversation there. We also love hearing from you via email or the old-fashioned way, via dove or pigeon. No, our PO box address is on the website as well, freshhellpodcast.com. And that's it. Please tell your pets we said hi, hug them, cuddle them, treat them kindly. If you maybe you're this kind of people who have like a model cottage somewhere with some model sheep, goats, be nice to them when you LARP as farmer woman, and be kind to your fellow peasants and be kind to yourself. Buy the diamond necklace if it's really what you want to wear to sleep.
That's right. That's right. And as we say every week, if you're going through hell,
Keep going. Tschüss.
see you next week.